The Rock Heart combined with physical-based Dragon Communion incantations, such as Dragon Maw and Blue Dancer's Charm, is a basic combo you might have thought of when you acquired the item or have seen around by now. It is a strong combo that elevates Blue Dancer's Charm's old status of being a crap talisman to one that is actually good. But just this combo alone is not strong enough for my liking, as it still has many shortcomings like a lack of flexibility and high FP usage. Therefore, it is only half my build. So let's see how my Way of the Martial Dragon creates a complementing combo that pushes this typical setup to a whole new level. But first, let's understand this half of the build in order for you to see how the other half works together with it. Rock Heart is a tool you can obtain from Elden Ring's DLC. To use this item, you must not have any armor pieces equipped, which is why Blue Dancer's Charm easily comes to mind. Using it for the first time transforms you into a dragon person and grants you 10% negation to all damage types and also 50 resistance to all 4 statuses. 10% negation is quite a bit for not needing any weight at all, even if 50 resistance is very little. If this is all the tool does, then it would just be alright. However, if you cast it again while already in dragon form, you will gain a 20% damage boost to Dragon Communion incantations for 60 seconds. You can use this repeatedly, and it does not consume any FP. Combined with the fact that you can now run the Blue Dancer Charm without completely giving up your negation, this new tool is one of the best in game. As for the Blue Dancer Charm, let's take a closer look at it. This charm increases your physical attack by a certain amount depending on how lightweight your setup is. The first large drop-off occurs starting from 8 weight. Thanks to the Rock Heart, we can stay below this weight to get a huge boost to our damage. And it is a bigger boost than most would imagine. You see, I deliberately said physical attack and not physical damage just a few seconds ago. This is because while all other charms like the Shard of Alexander, Godfrey's Icon, Lord of Blood Exaltation, and so on are all damage percent buffs, the Blue Dancer Charm buffs your base attack before defense calculation. Thanks to how defense works in Elden Ring, this means that your final damage can increase more than the percent on screen. So getting a 14% attack can result in a 16% damage bonus depending on the attack you're doing. It'll never be less than 14%, but it can be more. If you follow my build, you will end up getting roughly 14% more physical attack, because we are super lightweight. As for incantations, Dragon Maw is our main source of damage, because it deals physical damage, which combos well with the Blue Dancer Charm. It deals a lot of stance damage, at 45 per bite. It also has super armor, which allows you to poise through all but a few specific attacks. You can see that even the Omen's Grab will fail to grab you when you're in super armor. I find that this incantation performs better than the Dragon Claw, which also deals physical damage. To get the full value out of Dragon Claw, you want to cast it twice in a row. Overall, you actually end up with less DPS while being less FP efficient. As for Bale's incantations, both of them require more arcane than we want to be investing into. Even if you do invest enough arcane for their requirements, they're not that powerful. Bale's Tyranny deals fire and lightning damage, costs more FP than Dragon's Maw, and doesn't do more damage while doing less stance damage. Bale's Flame Lightning is, in my opinion, the stronger of the two moves. The claw itself actually deals physical damage, in addition to the flame and lightning damage. Because it has to go through defense thrice, the damage itself is only about as much as Bale's Tyranny, but it deals more poise damage. Still, for our build, it really isn't worth it. Dragon Maw is definitely stronger, without the need to overextend on arcane either. To supplement Dragon's Maw, we also run Exaiki's Decay and Rotten Breath, which are both physical dealing dragon breaths. We can also use them for our Rot combo later, but that is just a bonus. The difference between these two breath attacks is that you can use Rotten Breath from horseback. Furthermore, it is actually more FP efficient when it comes to applying Scarlet's Rot. Exaiki's Decay is the named dragon version of Rotten Breath, which you can use even in mid-air, and moves much better with your camera for free aim. It also has a longer range and outputs damage faster in a short period of time. However, it is extremely FP intensive, so I try not to use this too much. Combined with this is your typical buff incantations. Golden Vow helps us deal more damage and stay alive with the extra negation. Even if you don't like buffing much, I suggest keeping Golden Vow handy thanks to the much needed negation. Slotting the right greater barrier for the right boss also makes the boss fight a lot easier. As for Flame Grant Me Strength, I personally do away with the hassle, but it is a free way to buff your damage for 30 seconds. If you want maximum values, this is the way to go. Remember, it buffs both flame and physical damage by 20%, and Dragon's Maw and the majority of our other moves deal physical damage. Besides these, there are some options that you can consider for your build in order to deal magic damage to deal with enemies with high physical negation. The new Ghost Flame Breath is actually a blend between Smark's Glintstone Breath and Borealis' Mist. It deals less damage than the pure magic breaths, but more damage than both Dragon Ice and Borealis' Mist, while only doing half the frost buildup. I have heard people say it only deals a bit less frostbite than Borealis' Mist or Dragon Ice, but that is incorrect. It deals 55 frost buildup per tick instead of 110. It might be difficult to tell without proper testing, because you can still apply frostbite relatively quickly for the first time on most enemies. It is cheaper than Borealis' Mist and costs the same FP as Dragon Ice. My personal recommendation is if you want to keep your incantation count low, just bring Ghost Flame Breath. However, if you want to be more specialized, I suggest running Dragon Ice and Smark's Glintstone Breath. Why? The only time I want to apply Frostbite is on bosses, which Dragon Ice applies far quicker. I don't really find the need to use Borealis' Mist over Dragon Ice, because the damage difference is not large, and it is a lot more FP efficient. On the other hand, when I do want raw damage, it is usually in an AoE scenario in the open world, where I want to pump out as much damage as possible and have the option to free aim. So Smarks is the best choice here. Our sacred seal of choice is the Dragon Communion seal, since the seal gives Dragon Communion incantations a 15% damage buff. 2 of them if you have a second one from a friend or NG+. You can switch this on and off for maximizing damage. This sacred seal scales to Faith and Arcane, which we naturally invest into because of the incantation requirements. We will also be using the Arcane investment for our poison-infused Dane's Footwork or Dryleaf arts, whichever one you prefer. Check out my hand-to-hand breakdown video to see which one you like better. I'm sorry I forgot to include this slide in the hand-to-hand breakdown, but you want to invest into strength and dexterity equally to optimize the poison and bleed infusion for your hand-to-hand weapons attack. This is our stat distribution for a level 150 build. For our optimal class, both Prophet and Hero works exactly the same way, both having an unused 7 intelligence. 43 Faith and 45 Arcane to scale our Dragon Communion seal. Do remember that after the DLC patch has dropped, the soft cap for these hybrid seals are lowered to 43 instead of 45. The reason why I still have 45 Arcane is because the soft cap for poison and blood infusions have not changed. Additionally, we will also be investing 16 points into strength and dexterity to optimize the damage for the poison-infused martial art. 16 dexterity also pushes us right over the Dragon Maw incantation cast speed breakpoint, which makes it 1 frame faster. As for endurance, you don't actually need this much for light roll because our setup is so light. I invested a few points just for more stamina as it feels a lot smoother to play with. Since Dragon Communion incantations are expensive, you really want to be pumping quite a bit of mind. I went with 30 mind, as this allows you to perfectly cast Dragon Maw 5 times in a row. You don't need to go too hard on mind either, because we have other tools like our hand-to-hand weapon and its weapon art that allows us to save FP. And here is a quick example for a level 200 build, where you would invest more points into strength and dexterity for your weapon damage. More mind as well for more incantation usages. Alright, it is finally time to talk about part 2 of the combo. Let us first discuss why I am not running Palm Blast, the famous unique Ash of War for hand-to-hand arts. Yes, Palm Blast is good, but we have something better. While the hyper armor of Palm Blast does indeed come out faster than Dragon Maw, that is about the only aspect Palm Blast will be beating Dragon Maw, other than FP cost of course. But FP cost is a worth it trade-off, and also a result of Ash of War versus spells. And if we want fast hyper armor, my Ash of War pick is even faster. You will want to be charging Palm Blast most of the time. For the full breakdown, review my hand-to-hand video. Charging Palm Blast means it will be about as slow as Dragon Maw, and in terms of damage, let's use 80 strength on a heavy infused hand-to-hand art for pure physical attack for the Dancer charm. 417 attack is about as high as we will realistically get on an optimized 150 build, and more than we can get on my stat distribution. Using charged Palm Blast's damage percent, we get a total of 1918 damage, before defense and other multipliers, alongside 36 stance damage. On the other hand, with my stat distribution for Dragon Communion Seal and Dragon Maw, we will get a total of 2122 damage and 45 stance damage. So we are beating an optimized Palm Blast on both damage and stance damage, without even including the multipliers, such as 15% damage bonus from Dragon Communion Seal and 20% from Rock Heart, which are multiplicative. So what Ash of War are we running? Well, we're going with the Poison Flower Blooms twice, a new bullet art Ash of War, so its damage scaling does not depend on the weapon's base attack. It deals physical damage, which works well with our Blue Dancer's charm. The physical kick itself deals the majority of the Scarlet's Rot buildup, applying 160 Scarlet's Rot to enemies, so this is a fairly close range Ash of War if you want to get the full value. Landing the kick makes it good at applying Scarlet's Rot, and most importantly, it feels extremely smooth to use. Just like Poison Moth Flight, hitting a poison enemy removes the poison and deals 5% of their max HP plus 250 damage. However, Poison Flower Blooms twice also works on Scarlet's Rotted enemies, while the direct damage portion of this Ash of War is buffed by both the Divine Bird's Greaves and the Shattered Stone Talisman. That is not the reason why we choose it. We are going to run neither of these items. We can't wear armor, and the talisman is weaker than our other choices. This Ash of War also grants you hyper armor, and the speed at which this hyper armor comes out is 4 frames faster than Palm Blast. Now, a common saying I've heard is these Ashes of War turn poison into bleed, which is actually not a good way to think about it. Bleed deals a whole lot more damage at 15% max HP on regular enemies, and most bosses have a 30% bleed proc reduction, which still puts bleed at 10.5% of their max HP. Each bleed deals about twice as much proc damage as these Ash of War after you have removed the poison or Scarlet Rot. Enemies in Elden Ring have increased resistance once they suffer from a status effect, which means that it gets increasingly more difficult to apply the status effect. This is why I dislike the phrase, turn poison into bleed. If you remove the poison or Scarlet Rot right away, you're simply using a weaker version of bleed, as you don't get much out of the DOT. And because you can't kill as fast as a bleed setup, You end up finding it difficult to apply the status effect in the later portion of the fight, where the fight gets harder. So what should you do? Poison is definitely a slower acting status effect, so we should play into it. Let's say we wait 20 to 25 seconds before we remove the Scarlet Rot. We will get an additional 4.5% of their max HP, plus 375 damage from the Scarlet Rot, in addition to the removal damage. This removal damage does not change, whether 1 second has passed or 50 seconds has passed, as long as the target still has the status effect on them. Why am I waiting 20 or so seconds? The DOT is only part of the reason. The other goal is to utilize the second talisman that I'm running, the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, which grants us 20% damage dealt when poison or rot occurs in the vicinity. Keep in mind the keyword vicinity. If you blast the enemy at a range with your Scarlet Rot breaths, and they don't come near you before the Scarlet Rot procs, you won't be getting the bonus. But this is a powerful talisman, especially for our build. There's a limited number of ways to increase the damage of our Dragon Communion incantations, and this is a great way to get a large bonus. In fact, Poison or Scarlet Rot is an even better way than Bleed, as we can time the bonus for ourselves. When an enemy is affected by Poison or Scarlet Rot, you do not build up more Poison or Scarlet Rot until you remove it or the status expires. By using Poison Flower Blooms twice, we can remove the status effects and reapply it whenever the buff expires. Furthermore, Poison and Scarlet Rot do not share the same status bar. If you alternate between poisoning the boss with your hand-to-hand moveset and using the Ash of War to apply Scarlet Rot, bosses do not turn resistant as quickly, since you can juggle the two statuses. In between this time period, when we're waiting for the Kindred of Rot's buff to pass, we have something else to do, which is spamming our Dragon Communion skills that do get the 20% damage bonus from the Talisman. We can also choose to just let the Scarlet Rot run for even longer if the enemy is quite resistant to status effects. If they're completely immune, our Dragon Communion incantations can likewise carry us through. If you're fighting enemies that are not too powerful though, you can use the base moveset of your poison-infused martial art, which will trigger the talisman effect when you apply poison. Comboing with your Ash of War is more than enough to deal with enemies in an FP-efficient manner, while conserving FP for harder enemies. This covers up for our Dragon Communion incantations, while still working with the Blue Dancer charm, as Poison Infusion and your weapon art both deal physical damage. Your weapon only weighs 1 weight, and its two-handed moveset is fast and great at applying status effects. As for the 2 other talismans, I suggest running defensive ones. Your dragon transformation still leaves you quite brittle. I highly suggest using the right defensive elemental talisman over the Crimson Seed in boss fights. The Crimson Seed is just an all-round good defensive talisman. Here are a few other talisman options, but these are much more inferior in terms of value, and only good for filling a slot, or if you're extra confident, you don't need 2 defensive talismans. This is because we utilize a bunch of different moves that don't all benefit from one talisman, so I recommend sticking to my suggested talismans. As for the Crystal tier, Opaline Heart tier helps you stay alive, but there isn't really a great secondary option for our build. Green Burst Crystal tier can help you with stamina management, as we do have quite a low stamina pool. Blood-Sucking Crack tier is our best way to boost our damage, but it comes at the cost of 0.2% max HP plus 20 HP per second. This is actually fairly costly, and can put you into one-shot range. And finally, Stone Barb Crack tier is the offensive option I suggest. You can delay drinking your Crystal tier for a bit once you learn the boss's moveset to drink this mid-match. This way, you can really push your stagger potential and quickly close off the boss with burst damage. Delicate pieces flow smoothly together to create intertwining combos that complement each other, resulting in the strongest Dragon Communion and hand-to-hand build. This is my way of the martial dragon. Like and subscribe. If you want to support my work, please consider buying my fantasy novel or donating to my Patreon down below. With a book purchase, you can also request a topic from me. Krite, signing out.